All right, so hi everyone. Thanks for joining us once again. For those of you who just joined, welcome to our show. What we'll discuss during the event is a crucial topic of the future of UX in our current age of artificial intelligence. We invited quite a few awesome guests, as we would really love to hear multiple viewpoints and perspectives and have an amazing discussion. So our guests today come from both UX and AI backgrounds. All of them are quite busy, so due to previous commitments, one of them will have to leave a little bit early, another one will be joining us in a few minutes. And I really want to thank all of our guests for giving us their time and joining the event. I'm sure we'll hear lots of great insights and get lots of great answers to our audience questions. We'll introduce our wonderful guests in just a few minutes. Also, please keep in mind, today's event is about the future. And today we'll have some hypothetical discussions of what could be and could happen in the coming years, and maybe even make some predictions. But remember that the nature of any prediction is that some of them can be wrong, and obviously no one can predict things perfectly. All right. So for those of you joining us for the first time, my name is Michael. I'm the founder of a company called BeginX. What it is, it's a part-time UX career accelerator based on real mission-driven client projects that helps people who know UX basics transition into the field in one of the most efficient and affordable ways, and without quitting their jobs. And I don't mean this to brag or anything like that, but just wanted to give you a bit of a background for credibility purposes. We run quite a few cohorts by now, and it helped about like 150 people or so get hired into UX roles and basically make this transition. We'll tell you guys more about our program and also make a special announcement closer to the end of the event. Of course, that part is completely optional if it is applicable to you. So now let's get to the most fun part and introduce our awesome guest speakers. And then we'll jump into a couple of quick lightning talks and then the panel. So it is great to have you here. Thanks again for joining us. Would you like to briefly introduce yourselves to our audience? So guests, please feel free to turn your cameras back on. We'd love to hear a quick 30-second to a minute intro about your background, and then we do the talks, and Rob will kick us off with those. Anyone can just jump in. Who wants to go first?
Sure, my name is Trung Tran. I've been doing AI for 10 years. We're looking at next generation AI algorithms right now and trying to figure out, how to actually have an AI not just learn by rote, but by continuous learning through experience. So that's my background. We're building those kind of algorithms today.
Awesome. Thank you, Tran. Great to have you here.
I can go next. So hello, everyone. My name is David Fisher. I'm a independent / freelance product designer. I've been in the field for about 15 years, originally from the UK, but now I live in New York. I've been working in and around the AI space for the last 3 to 4 years. Prior to that, I worked at a design agency, a product design studio based in the UK that opened up a branch here in the States. And I've been working primarily with big tech companies, including Google, Meta, Unity. So I've been exposed to a lot of different ways of how organizations are trying to introduce AI into their products and the pitfalls that come with that. But also I come from an agency background, so I don't necessarily work in-house with big tech companies, which is it's a crucial distinction. But yeah, that's me.
Thank you, David. Great to have you here.
I guess I'll go next. From Italy, I've been in the design space for more than 20 years. Started in the early 2000s on the agency side, studied art direction and copywriting. So you see an example of somebody who switched careers a few times over time. Communications was key back then. Interactivity is something that excited me. So that's kind of like, I wasn't interested in how the internet was impacting communications back then. And then I moved closer to 2008, 2010, more on the product side, and been going back and forth a little bit. Agency, corporate side. My last job I was at Sketch, and now I am JPMorgan Chase. So lots of different companies. So if you have any questions about that, happy to talk about it later too.
Awesome. Thank you, Francesca. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Sasha. I'll go and then I can.
I
From
think
me?
Sasha just joined. Yeah, we're just doing the intros and then we'll do a couple of talks and then panel.
Oh, sure. Perfect timing. Hi, everyone. My name is Sasha. I'm a product designer. I'm currently working at Elate Health. I'm designing software for medical professionals. In the past, I led a UX team at Tapcon Healthcare, where we designed medical software and hardware. I'm very passionate about AI and very excited to contribute to this conversation today. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Glad to have you here.
Okay, yeah, my name is Rob Strati. Yeah, I have a background in UX, web design, and research. I'm an entrepreneur, started a consulting company in 2015, and we joined Mighty TV, which was a machine learning powered mobile app to help people find things to watch based on their preferences, swiping through movies and TV shows from things like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon. And that was acquired by Spotify in 2017. I started a project called First Blush, which leveraged emotional AI to create a dating app that would sort of read people's emotions, facial expressions as they were watching videos and do video analysis on the videos themselves. And led a research team on a larger data team doing data products to generate recommendations for daily harvest customers. So taking data based on people's preferences and their food selections, and then coming up with recommendations based on that. And then recently, I started working with a meditation app that uses generative AI and a simple prompt to create meditations for people that are very personalized based on what you're going through.
Thank you, Rob. Great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
So with that said, Rob, do you want to kick us off with your first lightning talk, and then David will go after that?
Sure. I just put together a bunch of notes. So I'm going to kind of read through this, jump in with any questions. Yeah, just some thoughts, especially I've been in the machine learning space, effective AI, emotional AI. There are different kinds of AI. And I've been working in that area for about 8 years. But then especially in the last 9 months, 6 months, large language models and generative AI has sort of like taken over everything. So feeling like it all kind of burst on the scene in February. And now kind of in a place of seeing what's going to happen, as opposed to being super excited about it, seeing what's going to kind of filter out. But some of my notes I have here is, so as we move into a phase more and more influenced by better language, the large language models, the landscape of user experience is poised for transformation. Traditional visual design conventions, so a constant since the early 2000s, will gradually become obsolete, making room for more multisensory and dynamic user interactions like voice, facial expressions, environmental data. And I call this shift from going from UX, user experience, to FIX, F-I-X, fully immersive experience, which leverages multimodal design conventions. So OpenAI just announced a major expansion of ChatGPT's capabilities, where it's not just text entering the field, it integrates voice and image functionalities to create a more intuitive multimodal conversational AI. So the transition from visual to voice and interactive AI, the visual elements that we're all used to when looking at a screen or a mobile app, things like checkboxes, radio buttons, call to action buttons, navigation, pagination, text fields, are currently core to data collection. So these design conventions function as a bridge to help gather information and preferences. But with AI's influence a shift from these static elements to more multi-sensory data collection will offer insights that are more nuanced and specific, which is essential for creating hyper-personalized outcomes. So an example for this is, consider a traditional online shopping experience where a user selects preferences using a checkbox for size, color, style. Each tick is a data point, a static expression of preference, but it lacks depth and context. So now imagine a shopping experience enhanced by AI. Instead of ticking boxes, the user engages in a conversational interaction. They express preferences in natural language. I'm looking for summer dress, light fabric, vibrant but not too bright, something that's casual yet elegant. So this AI-driven interaction captures not just the user's preferences, but the specific nuances and contexts that checkboxes can't. It understands the ambivalence in choices and can provide further asking for clarification. Do you prefer floral or abstract patterns? Is there a particular length you're comfortable with? So every response adds layers to the user's profile. So rather than discoverability, it's more about curation. So thinking from design conventions and standards that would be used in those sort of situations. Creating multi-dimensional rich data sets is not just about what the users want, but precisely how and why they want it. So from content discovery to curation and prioritization, large language models foster an environment where infinite options are generated in real time, steering the UX from content discovery to curation and prioritization. So AI's capabilities to process and generate content aligns with the user's preferences and behaviors. The visual experience will be more in presentation, transformation, and refinement options. I think an analogy here is to think of autonomous vehicles. And so the transition from, and we can think of the traditional interface with the checkboxes and buttons and fields, similarly to a car with a dashboard, a steering wheel. And as autonomous vehicles become more and more, or better and better, all of that interface will disappear. And so what then becomes the need for control, the need for experience, and the design conventions that evolve from that. And lastly, I imagine the current UX landscape that I've been talking about that we see on phones and on our screens as something like Morse code in the 19th century. And the advent of large language models, we're transitioning to the telephone. So you had the Morse code that was doing all this communication. In the 19th century, Morse code saw a system of communication that depended heavily on visual and tactile signals. It relayed information through sequences of dots and dashes representing letters and numbers. Each message, though effective, was fragmented, requiring interpretation and translation. The introduction of the telephone revolutionized this landscape. It removed the visual dependency, offering an auditory experience that was not just direct, but also rich in tonal nuances, immediate feedback, and personal engagement. In a parallel vein, large language models are poised to effect a similar transformation in UX. The shift from visual and static interactions, akin to Morse code, to fluid, intuitive, and conversational exchanges mirrors the leap from Morse code to telephones. Users will interact with interfaces as they would in a conversation, with AI understanding, responding, and adapting in real time, heralding a new era of personalization and enriched user experiences. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Rob. Really appreciate it. David, you want to continue?
Yeah, so hello everyone. I just wanted to kick off my lightning talk by saying, Michael asked me to do this a couple of days ago. I don't have anything super polished prepared. But what I would like to talk to you about, which you might find relatable, is, I'm a designer, I'm a freelancer. I know that a lot of the folks in the audience are people that are looking to transition into UX or become designers themselves. So I figured just kind of telling you about my everyday life as a designer is probably going to be more akin to what you're going to experience in the near term, with a couple of thoughts about the future interspersed throughout. So three things I want to cover. So context, what I'm seeing currently, and then what I think might come down the road. So to begin with, context, Rob talked a little bit about this with his lightning talk just now, in terms of we are in a transition period. So when I started my UX career, mobile wasn't a thing. The iPhone didn't exist. We still had feature phones, which were your Nokias, your Sony Ericssons, really dumb things. Predictive text was like the most advanced thing you could get, aside from playing Snake. And the iPhone came out, and we suddenly had this brand new general purpose computing device. And that required a whole bunch of new design to be created, new patterns, new behaviors, observing how people interacted with this, magical square of glass. And I feel that, now we're like at the iPhone 15, the kind of innovation that comes with the iPhone is still pretty staggering, but we've kind of we started to reach the point where it's mature. And the reason why I mention this is because, I kind of wrote my UX dissertation about touch interfaces before phones were a thing. So to see it kind of go full circle and now touch interfaces be a thing of not the past, but like it's a thing that everyone has in their pocket is kind of astounding to me. Also makes me feel a tiny bit old. However, we're now seeing things like, as Rob mentioned, large language models starting to do pretty incredible things. I don't know how many of you folks have shown OpenAI or ChatGPT to your parents, but showing them some of these things has elicited some pretty fantastic responses that it seems like magic to them. So I think my point here is that we're at a point now where we're transitioning to potentially what is a new computing paradigm, where you don't necessarily have to tap buttons on a screen to input something into your computer, but rather point a camera or a microphone and have the machine take that part of the interaction away and like do it for you. So I think that's what's really exciting. AI has the potential to make technology easier to use and more intuitive and more human. And the reason why I mention this is because when I started my career, a lot of people that I worked with and that I learned from were people that came from the print industry. And I think that's kind of relevant because the print industry, existed for hundreds of years before the internet came along. And people that came from the print industry brought in artifacts from the print industry into web design. So like margins and like footers and headers. These are all things that came from printing information on paper. And you kind of have to wonder, how did that kind of make the leap over onto the web and the internet that we know now as a whole? But these things have a way of kind of persisting for quite a long time. Like even the Romans, made the roads the width that they are because of horse buggies. So we still live with roads and lanes that have the same constraints as the Romans did. So these kind of legacy decisions kind of persist and live on. But I think my point here is that we're kind of at a point where we're going to have to start rediscovering or discovering how people are going to interact with AI as a whole. And to Rob's point, there's a lot of different types of AI, and I think all of them together are going to have very different ways that we interact with them. So that's a neat point for me to kind of transition to how I'm seeing AI affect my daily workflow as a designer. So I work for a lot of different clients throughout the year. I tend to have 2 or 3 projects throughout the year of varying lengths, usually 2 or 3 months. But the things that I'm seeing now, especially with my work and the sorts of teams that I work with, is that I'm generally working with smaller teams because people are now able to do much more with the tools that we have. So one thing I'll touch upon, which isn't necessarily AI, but design systems, that just the ability to have a set of pre-configured, pre-designed components that we can use as building blocks to create brand new experiences. That's taken a huge amount of work out of being a designer. When I started being a designer, we didn't have reusable components. We used to have to design everything from scratch. So teams were much bigger. Things took a lot longer. And with design systems, you can go from a concept to an idea very quickly. And I think AI is going to augment that even further. You're going to be able to go from taking components and constructing something yourself to, maybe creating a prompt that articulates what you want your design system to build, and then the machine builds it for you, and you can tweak as you see fit. Another thing that I've been kind of seeing in my everyday work is just kind of using tools to help me ideate. So as I said, I'm a freelancer. I don't always have the luxury of a design team to bounce ideas off. That's actually one of the things that I really miss about working in larger teams, is that, you have a lot of different perspectives. You can share ideas, you can get feedback. Usually having lots of different people in the room gets you a breadth of perspective that you usually can't get by yourself. So that's something that I've been using, things like ChatGPT, to kind of help me understand what other avenues am I not looking at? What other ideas could I potentially do with these constraints that I'm not necessarily exploring? So that's actually been a pretty remarkable one for me. And just anecdotally speaking to other friends of mine that are in a similar kind of career path, using these tools in a similar way. I had one anecdote about a project I did recently where, I had a client who wanted to pitch an idea to an investor. So he wrote up this, requirements document of what he envisaged the thing to be. And he asked me, how can we make this easier to understand? Maybe you can create like a user flow just to kind of show people the path that, our users and, all the people involved in this service are going to, what's this going to look like? I'll admit here, I'm a designer, but I'm terrible at drawing. I cannot draw to save my life. But I found a tool that helped me create really beautiful hand-drawn sketches just based on a prompt. And I was able to create 12 or 13 very pretty sketches that, ultimately explain the whole purpose of what we were trying to communicate to the people we were presenting to in a visual way. And this used to be something that we used to have to pay someone to come into our team, like a sketch artist, to kind of listen to what we were trying to visualize. That person would then go away, do the sketches, come back, ask for feedback. So I was able to assume that role and not have to kind of pay for the expense of bringing a sketch artist in to understand what the requirements were. So that was like a fantastic add-on of value that I could provide my clients. So I think the way that I'm starting to think about these things is capability augmentation. So like, whilst I'm not a sketch artist, I can do sketching now. Obviously not as well as a professional sketch artist, but I can get 90% of the way. So that's very valuable. Another thing that I'll mention here is UX research. I kind of came to be a designer when the UX designer was also responsible for doing research. Part of the job was always to kind of, plan user interviews, sit in the interviews, transcribe them, analyze the outputs, and then synthesize things into insights, and then present that back to the team, and then, take that away and then figure out how that becomes a design. There's now tools that effectively help me do that by myself, whereas before I would have needed 2 or 3 other people to help me with that. So that's actually a pretty remarkable thing that's only just happened in the last 12 months. Tools have come online that help me do this. Similarly, writing is like one of the big ones that ChatGPT does very well, especially if you like English is your second language. Being able to kind of paste some text into ChatGPT and help it, ask it to help you refine your language, choose better terminology, check for flow. These are things that are remarkably valuable to people. I also have another point around potentially just AI just being able to kind of really leverage your skills and amplify them in a way. So in terms of future changes, things that I see potentially changing for the UX profession, as I mentioned, we're kind of reaching this kind of end portion of the smartphone era. I'm not saying that they're going to go away. However, we might enter into a new world where there might be a next general purpose computing device, and that might be a smartphone. It might be a wearable device. I don't know how many of you have seen, but there's a lot of devices came out this week that are kind of wearables that you just wear on your lapel, and you speak to it and it detects context and sees what you're doing, and it provides answers on that basis. There's still a lot of things that haven't been explored, a lot of scenarios that aren't really kind of factor into account how society might react to that. are people going to be okay with people having always on, always recording microphones and cameras? I think perhaps not, or it might take a bit of time to get to that point. Another thing I will say, and there's this kind of big battle going on between Meta and Apple with potentially having like an augmented reality device. I'm not particularly sold on AR or VR being the next general purpose computational device. However, I do think it will have some very interesting use cases. But even designing for 3D, like if you've ever spoken to a game designer, or if you've ever had a go at using Unity or Unreal Engine, designing things in 3D is actually very difficult. You have a whole third dimension to play with that you don't usually have in traditional design, where we have 2 dimensions. And that actually increases complexity by orders of magnitude. So I think there's elements that AI can help augment design there in helping make that easier. Another thing I will mention is for anyone that's worked in finance or healthcare or pharmaceuticals or aviation, regulation is a huge thing. A lot of these industries are heavily regulated for a reason, primarily safety, protecting people. I foresee that AI, or a few forms of it, will eventually become regulated. So working within regulatory constraints is also going to be a big challenge, because they're not always easy to interpret. And, you have to think about third order consequences of how your design decisions are going to affect people and adhere to potential regulation. So these are things that I can kind of see coming down the road. But fundamentally, I think that the UX professions is essentially based around interpreting people and culture and society. So I'm not really sure that AI is going to be able to step in and fill that role, at least not in the near term. So I think that eventually the role of the UX designer is going to be that kind of cultural and human liaison in terms of how can we make a design, truly hit for people, because ultimately we're designing for user needs, people's needs, and I think that's always going to be there as long as we're human. So that's my optimistic take on it, at least. But yeah, I've been talking a lot, so I'm gonna stop now, but feel free to ask me any questions in the chat or at some point later.
All right, awesome. Thanks, David. It's great. Okay, so now let's move on to the actual panel discussion. So our awesome guests, please bring your videos back on. So I'll facilitate the discussion. We might have to interrupt occasionally to ensure we're on time and have a chance to answer most of the questions, or at least as many as possible, and give the audience a chance to ask plenty of questions as well. Also, again, every guest speaker doesn't have to answer every single question. Just pick the ones that you feel you might have the most insight on. For the folks in the audience, if you have a question, please use the Q&A tab. This way you can upvote others' questions, and we also make sure that we address the most popular ones that many people are interested in. Ideally, please also let us know which speaker the question is for. And just a reminder, for those of you guys transitioning into UX, the career transition roadmap handout will be available at the end of the session. So feel free to stick around to get that. All right, let's kick off with this question, right? So what do you guys think of some recent AI developments that really captured your attention and you think are really important?
From my standpoint, everyone's kind of enamored with ChatGPT and LLM models, but that's just a more advanced chatbot. The what's going to happen with that? Everyone's kind of rushing into it. That everything's going to shake out. What's more interesting is like what's being done in healthcare and like Bayesian health, and people like Suji Saria and other leaders in AI, where you're looking at small signal models, where you're individualizing AI models. Like right now, the problem with like AI, if you try to generalize for the entire population, and that's not really useful from that standpoint of when you look at, even like a chatbot, like ChatGPT, it can't work for medical contexts, it can't work for scientific contexts, where, the domain specific language is not part of the model, right? You have to retrain it. So for me, the role of AI in the future is going to be to reduce the amount of information we have to deal with, and kind of give us what's relevant. And that's really important for UI UX, because helping to understand what's relevant to people is going to be really important. So UI researcher, the way you kind of, like the gentleman was saying earlier, make more immersive experiences, but really the idea is to kind of individualize your world, individualize the data for your world. And so from that standpoint, you look at medicine, like things like, precision medicine, or, where you have epigenomics for environment, genes, and all that to determine how you react to medicine. That's a very specific distribution for you, as opposed to a large clinical trial like COVID-19, where you're trying to make, for 300,000 people, a medicine that covers 7 billion people, right? And so from that standpoint, we're going to transition from large scale models to more individualized models, and that's really exciting.
I've got a yes and for Trung's answer. So on the note of individualized or smaller scale models, I don't know how many of you are on Apple's latest iOS 17. One of the things that was included in that is it's actually an assistive technology feature whereby you as an individual can essentially use this feature to recreate your own voice. So Apple's created this feature which essentially allows you to read, I think it's something like 150 words back to your device, and it can then process that information and then recreate your voice in a synthetic way. And that's amazing, mainly because it would allow people that don't have the ability to speak to, or, if they find themselves in a situation where they can't speak, they have the ability to use their voice, or potentially, if you have lost your voice and you do have recordings of your voice, you can recreate it digitally. Conversely, the dark side of this is that, and this is a silly anecdote, but I get a lot of spam calls here in the US. It's absolutely terrible. But I got a voicemail from Snoop Dogg the other day trying to sell me insurance. So that was kind of fun, but also slightly terrifying.
Did it work?
It did not, no.
So anyone else wants to add any AI developments that really captured your attention that you think are really cool or important? All right.
I mean, I guess I'll jump in. What's been curious to me, and I think what Trung was saying about ChatGPT just being a more advanced chatbot, is how it's all sort of transpired, how quickly in December, January, the sort of like blast of this new technology being out there, and then understanding how products are built, how Adobe came out with Firefly. Pretty significant companies were coming out with advanced AI, generative AI tools that must have been working on for 6 to 9 months to a year before. So I just question, and in 2018, Google, I don't know if people remember this, but they did a display of Google Duplex where a chatbot ordered pizza, and there was huge pushback and questions about ethics and things like that. But fundamentally, in 2018, that's what ChatGPT is doing now. So this technology, and the big thing with ChatGPT is that you could ask a question and then a follow-up question, then a follow-up question, and everyone's like, wow, this is awesome. I just question, how many things are going on behind the scenes that are already developed.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to understand, like, how you build a model, how you train AI, right? A large language model, which is what ChatGPT is based off of, right? Is that they want an internet and had a lot of conversational pairs. So basically, to have people come in, I did that with Bard. Bard, I was helping teach Bard, which is Google's ChatGPT, how to write a song, because I happen to write songs, right, kind of thing. And And what you need to do is have lots of examples of conversations. And so Amazon was trying to do a long time ago. Alexa, they still record everything you say, but regards to what are the conversation pairs, what you say and what's the response. Response pairs is what ChatGPT learned. And so there's a lot of research, and there's no new AI algorithm. People get that mistaken. It's been like 10 years since the latest new AI algorithm where you use machine learning with DNNs or whatever. I won't get too technical on the whole thing, but there's no really new algorithms. There's just new ways to adapt it, right? And so what OpenAI did was they spent a lot of time, and it takes a long time to build a large language model, which is why a lot of people are just adapting theirs, right, to try to make it work, as opposed to training their own. But from that standpoint, you're right. There's a lot of work going on, and I think again, I would suggest you look at the less generative and more continuous learning algorithms, right? Generative algorithms themselves are just fixated on a distribution they sample from. That's how it works, right? So you give it a ton of examples, and then it selects things that may fit within that distribution or that example, and then it generates that for you. So it can, I think AlphaGo was the first one that did it, right? Kind of thing, where they had 30 some odd million games moves in Go, and they created a distribution of what the likely next move was in Go, right? And despite what OpenAI, I love DeepMind and OpenAI because they always talk about machines thinking and stuff like that. Machines don't think; it's statistics, right? It's math. They may be scary because it's math, but still math, right? At the end of the day, we have really big calculators that I call PCs and servers. But at the end of the day, when you have this distribution, when you look at all these different games of Go, you actually can decide or understand what the next move is, and you sample from that. So again, that's assuming there's ground truth. There's a right answer to a computational pair, Rob, right? And in the world that I live in and you live in, there's no real right answers. The world's not that black and white. And that's why, again, I talk about individualization of models, right? Where it's really context-based, like what I believe should be the answer to what kind of pizza I should get. If I was in Europe, tuna is an option, which is terrible, Dave. I'm not sure why Europeans eat tuna on their pizza, but from that standpoint, there's a lot of cultural context and stuff like that. And it's hard. I remember I talked to BMW's AI lead when we talk about self-driving cars, Rob. I think you mentioned that, right? His dream in the future is one, no one owns a car. All the cars are owned by these Ubers, things like that, and they just kind of deliver a car to you and drive you where you need to go, right? And his idea was that every car would come in at night and park in a garage and upload its experience for the day, how it learned how to drive. And then we talked about whether there should be an Uber context model, like a big cloud that decides how you should drive in the world. And we said you can't do that because context matters. And his example was that 4 lanes in Europe and America are 4 lanes. In China, it's 8 lanes. And India is as many lanes as you want, right? So different driving rules. I would argue Boston's like that too. So their driving rules are going to be very context based, and so you can't build up one way to drive. And so that's what I really mean by individualized models. They have to have context for regions and stuff like that. And a lot of that has to be done not with just like guide rails like they're doing with ChatGPT now, but we're really understanding the differences between how humans communicate. That's really where I see the role of UI UX in the future. Is that nerds like me who like data, we love data, but giving us the ability to actually kind of understand how the data is used, how human beings actually interpret it and understand it, is going to be revolutionary in the future. And that's really kind of the push that's going on right now.
I'm going to add something really quick on the question that was asked at the very beginning. I feel like it was what recent developments on the AI. I cannot speak to the quality of the language model, etc. But I think from the UX designer and user standpoint, one thing that OpenAI released recently and is still rolling out to not everybody, but some users, is the ability to not only have to describe the prompt in text, but also be able to use a prompt that is a visual prompt, for example, or an audio prompt. Audio, it's closer to text, but visual, it's a huge leap, and it happened still within the last year. And not that there were not other systems to do it, but it's just they will make it as easy as taking a picture or uploading a file. And so that, I think, the UX of how we use AI also is the big part of why it exploded. As we said, a lot of people were already working on these projects. They already shown some of these, but they didn't really figure out a way to make it easy to use and more, and so that's why I think also exploded right now. And so we'll see other ways to use it as well. So I'm excited about that.
Thank you, Francesco. All right, let's talk a little bit more. Where do you guys think AI is kind of heading, and what is likely to change in the next few years? Rob, do you want to kick us off?
Oh, I feel like I've talked a lot. I feel like maybe Sasha.
I can try, yes.
Yeah,
Well, I think it's definitely a blind guessing. No one, at least I didn't know where it's gonna get, a year ago. So I think two things are obvious to me. First is generally all the experiences are getting more personalized, right? Given this technology available for us. But I think one trend that I think I'm expecting is that every single company you can see right now is advertising AI as the new feature. In majority of cases, it's just a ChatGPT wrapper, right? When there's no deep feature embedded in this application or website, is just literally access to ChatGPT through the UI of the original application. So I think this all gonna settle down. I think a lot of companies will just disable those features or like sunset them, and only several companies will still have the offerings in this market that will provide more than just ChatGPT experience. So when they have the homegrown systems that are trained on a specific data set that's relevant for the users, and this feature would allow a deep analysis, right? And some sort of a very exclusive experience that is not available through just Googling and going to ChatGPT. So this the only two guesses I have for now, and then let's see what else is going to happen.
Thank you, Sasha. So who wants to add? What are your thoughts on like where AI is heading and what is likely to change in the next few years?
Well, I think what Dave said earlier is regulation, right? There's a lot of fear that's being run around. Again, I think that's because a lot of the AI community, especially OpenAI, are trying to make amorphize. They used to think that it's freaking Terminator time, and we're looking at Judgment Day, and everyone's going to die because these AI is going to raise up and kill everybody. I think the real concern is influence, right? And so when you start having conversations, and for good or bad, we trust the machines. I always tell people that imperfect people can't make perfect machines. So why do you trust ChatGPT is telling you the right thing? Why do you trust that video online is correct? Why do you trust the the pictures and everything you're being presented? It's the real world or not, right? And so from that standpoint, a lot of regulation is going to come in. I think there's going to be a lot of shakeout in the AI community. I think we're in the stage of pre-law where everyone's just having fun trying to do things, to Francesco's point. But from a standpoint, when you look at things like Europe and slamming down on biometrics, like you can't actually capture your voice anymore, Dave, right? You have to have consent and all this other stuff, right? You can't capture your face in biometrics, right? And so a lot of that's going to limit how you use AI and what you train AI for. I think the scarier thing for regulation is replacing people. I think to a certain extent, if you're very formulaic in the scripts you write, that's why we had the writer's strike recently, right? Or you're very formulaic in the things that your creativity. If what AI does is learn from the past, so it has a lot of examples of what happened before, learns those examples that can generate things that are derivative from those examples, right? Kind of thing. And so whatever you think of Hollywood scripts, where a lot of scripts are derivative or not, right? That's where the concern came out from Hollywood writers, right? And so the question really is, do we protect human beings, right? Do we protect jobs, right? Today's point where I made it easier for him to generate a sketch and all that stuff probably scares the hell out of graphic designers, right? Who are trying to make money selling sketches, right? Or being used to develop sketches. And so that's going to be another part that's going to drive regulations, is the human costs of AI used in certain jobs. I think a lot of that's going to be under the hood, to Sasha's point. We're not going to make those public available. They'll be in the companies themselves, and how the companies actually get more efficiencies out of the workers. And so you have to really worry about those two things: A, the societal impact of replacing people, and then B, where or not you're actually allowed to capture some of the information that AI has been kind of using, and we're giving away data so that we can train people. I think Rob can tell you that they're giving away data all the time to train machines to market back to you. A lot of restrictions going to be that we can't access that data anymore. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens when that happens.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Dave,
I have another perspective, which is kind of a bit more high level from like a macro, almost like geopolitical level. But one thing that we're seeing now as well is that the players that can afford to develop AI technology, like Meta, Microsoft, Google, these people have a lot of money. And one of the main things that constrains the performance of a lot of the AI technology that we see today is compute power. So that seems to be a fairly big bottleneck. And like one of the things that's still prevalent is that not everyone has access to the same silicon. So the chips that tend to run AI algorithms best tend to be custom chips. Google has their own custom built chips, as does Apple. Meta recently announced the Quest 3, which apparently runs better because Qualcomm helped them build a new chip, but they were waiting for Qualcomm to build that chip for quite a while. A lot of the other kind of wearables industry also has been kind of hamstrung by the lack of development in silicon. And this kind of spills over into the world stage. So I don't know how many of you have heard of a company called TSMC, but they're one of the largest chip foundries based in Taiwan. And the US is now kind of in an ongoing process of trying to create and start up its own silicon foundry in, I believe it's New Mexico or Nevada, because it's a geopolitical threat to have
Arizona.
a lot of the Arizona. Have a lot of chip production based in Taiwan, which is very close to China, mainland China. So these things are starting to affect life in ways that we hadn't previously imagined. And AI is effectively, we are at the start of an arms race to some extent. So I think that might actually be something that continues to happen. We might have companies or different territories or countries that will be able to create AI products and technologies that we might not build here. Because of regulation or lack of capability. So that's kind of another lens that I've been kind of idly thinking about.
Yeah, it seems like it might be kind of hard. Like regulation seems very important, but it might be very hard to align on regulation in different countries. So kind of to touch on that point. What do you guys think? Have you had experience using those tools that attempt to design interfaces? And what are your thoughts on those?
We all wish they worked. I can jump in first. I definitely attempted to use some of them and I did not find them helpful. Although just today I received an email from Figma that they're rolling out something related to AI. And I have more hope in Figma than any of those plugins because they took their time, they boiled it, they thought of it, and they're about to release something. So maybe that will be more productive. Generally, my use to AI tools narrowed down to using ChatGPT powered text editors that help me to, write or consolidate or summarize notes faster. Any tools for UX research, right? Because, conducting research goals is easy for me, but sitting down and processing and analyzing is definitely a task. So that's been very helpful for me. But in terms of UI design, I still use Figma the way it is. I use a few plugins that help me out with management of design system, right? Just like identifying similar patterns, replacing them, generating patterns with explanation. But the original creativity and time I put into designing is still the same.
I want to chime in. I think I had a similar experience. I tried a lot of different things. Most successful has been in practice, like I have side projects where I code as well. I'm not a developer by training, so I need, if I usually find something and modify it. And ChatGPT has been very helpful, not only at generating the code for me if I ask the right prompt, but also at explaining. That's one thing that ChatGPT can do really well, is it telling you step by step what's happening. Because sometimes you might find the code somewhere and it's not explained because it's just meant to work, but not for you to learn. And so it's a great learning experience that way. I've tried the ones I tried for UI design specifically, they were definitely lacking. They're very, they're still impressive. Don't get me wrong. Like a few months ago, I've been really excited to say, oh my God, I literally scanned this last night, took a picture of it. I don't know if you can see it. Very basic. I wanted to simulate a top bar search and some results. And I'm impressed something came out of it with this tool called UI Wizard. But not something usable, right? Like maybe it's the equivalent of something, just converting it to vector almost. Didn't really do a great job. But if, for example, Figma is very well positioned to do that because they have a ton of design systems in their system, a combination of a design like this with components from an actual design system, now it's creating a starting point, at least, that it's much closer to what maybe I wanted to actually express. And because they're constraining the possible options, is not every possible primary call to action is going to be the call to actions that you have in your system that are going to be the right results. So it's much more likely to yield something that is a better starting point. And lastly, the other thing that was useful for me was generating realistic content. I do believe that whenever you're designing, you want to test your designs, components, or prototypes with realistic content. And I, for example, made a plugin for Figma that allows you to use Bard or ChatGPT from a spreadsheet to then populate your designs. That is, a practical use that if I had to generate it myself, it would have taken some time to come up with realistic content. And you can be very specific down to the length of the content you want to have, the quality, the tone. There's really a lot that you can do for practical design help. And I don't want to keep talking, but those are two of the three things that were very useful for me, at least in the last 6 months.
I want to quickly add one more application that I personally was happy with. I used ChatGPT to do a quick competitive analysis across a few companies. It's fascinating how deep it can go in research for me. If you didn't know, ChatGPT is capable of tabular view output. So your prompt could sound something, please create a competitive analysis and present in a table where you compare X, Y, and Z companies and looking at properties such as price, free account option or something else. And you get a very well-crafted table. And it's also capable of edits. So if you didn't like the output in one way or another, you can request some updates to it. That's been very helpful. It saved me probably an hour and a half of work.
Yeah, I'd agree with Sasha. I had a similar experience. After leaving Daily Harvest, I just tried as a little test to kind of ask ChatGPT to kind of summarize the Daily Harvest customer profile, reasons why people would go to Daily Harvest, problems that they would have with Daily Harvest. And we had done years, so I headed up the research team at Daily Harvest. So we had done a number of years answering these questions, and it was shocking how accurate it could answer those questions. Pulling from all the data, that's available. So I kind of warned the researchers, like, this is different. This is pretty different. And then there's another tool called Gamma, which generates presentations, which also does a pretty impressive job. I mean, again, there's a need to go in and edit, which is a little cumbersome. But creating the sort of core content through just a few topic points is really impressive. So Gamma is something that I would recommend people try out. And Rob, I'm sorry, I do have to.
Rob, just to clarify quickly, so you were talking about ChatGPT just generating it by itself, right? So you did not really feed that data to it, right? Because you know how you can enter a lot of, Okay.
Right, so I'm just imagining it's pulling from public, and this would have been pulling from public data a few years ago, right? But it literally described the Daily Harvest customer in ways that we had done reports on after interviewing, 20, 30 people and doing quantitative research and surveys and things like that. Almost exactly. And understanding customer problems, why people would come to Daily Harvest. So that comparison was very dramatic.
It's just
again, this is
like,
so awesome. I hate that I have to leave, but I do have to go. This is an awesome conversation.
We'll have you back on at another event. We'll do a part 2 at some point.
It's so cool, so cool. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Everyone.
Thanks for joining us, Rob. All right. Anything else you guys want to add in terms of if you used any tools that attempt to design interfaces?
I'll mention one last one, and this might be familiar to a few of the designers, or at least the folks that are into prototyping. But Framer, which used to be a product which was about very high interactivity prototyping, recently kind of revamped their offering, and it now creates basically anything based on a prompt. I haven't used it a ton, but it's actually pretty impressive how far you can get with just a prompt. And I think it kind of covers a lot of the use case of just having very basic websites. If you have if you need just a standalone website for your business, not a lot of interactivity, it creates something pretty good very quickly. So it's a very specific use case, but I think we're kind of reaching the point where for very simple use cases, you can create something that hits a level of quality that you ordinarily would not have been able to get. So I'm keen to see what else comes out of that, especially with things like design systems or being able to train models on internal UI, for example. If you work within a big corporation that has a standard set of patterns, I think that would be pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure some people are doing this already, but I'm curious to see more of it.
Yeah, I think, as senior designers, you guys kind of know what the basics are and have AI created for you, and then you customize it. One of the concerns I have, and I'd like to throw it out to you guys, right? If the AI is building the basic things, how does a new UI UX person learn? Because usually, when you have an agency, you have some kind of thing, the people that will come in would do the basic things, right? With the more creative or senior people. And so that's one of the things that we struggle with a lot, kind of thing, is the more you automate, you remove the ability for people to do simple things and actually train them on the job, right? And so now you have a whole generation of people who can never reach your level because they never actually did the simple things, right? They had to jump into the difficult things. And I know you guys are really good about that, right? But training is going to be something that's super important. And so even though it's more convenient for you guys now, it might be better in the long term for your company, your agency, to have a human being struggle with it, right? And to get better in the future. So just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a great point. You guys want to respond?
I think it's true, but to some extent, I think it's also entirely reliant on the medium, right? So I don't know how to fix an internal combustion car when it goes wrong. I'm sure my dad does, but if I buy an electric car as my next car, I don't really need that knowledge. So I think it's very circumstantial. I think there's absolutely some things about human factors that will remain true as long as we're humans and have bodies. But some things that are part of design, I'm sure we can eventually forget. Yeah, I think that's kind of where I stand on it. But I completely agree. People should have a knowledge of the basics. But I think as technology progresses and things get built on top of one another, some of those really low level things aren't really relevant anymore.
Well, again, if you guys check to see some of the most high paying jobs in the country, longshoremen, welders, those are all skills that are dying. They're getting aged out, right, kind of thing. And they're skills that people still need, right? But there's no way to train a young learner because a robot can do welding, right? It could build a car, right? But heaven forbid we have EMP and the human beings have to go work on their cars again, right? And not rely on a robot to tell them what to do. Because we have mechanics now that literally don't know how to diagnose a car unless a computer tells them what to go fix, right? And so those are kind of dangerous things. And I go back to UI UX. I mean, there are mechanical things or there's simple things that have to be learned and only learned on the job, right? And I go back to what the head surgeon at Cleveland Clinic told me. You can't learn surgery from a computer, from a book, right? Because they only know what the rules are. You learn how to do surgery by having experience doing surgeries with your team and building up a camaraderie and kind of an idea how to do it. If we have the machines always do the simple stuff, there's never that learning and there's never that ability to do creativity, right? To have younger people inject new ideas into a process that makes it hard. So that's where my concern is. I think the the rush to use the cool tools is there, right? The societal impact is just really thought through.
Yeah, maybe it could be both, right? So machines could do some things, but then new folks would be still trained by doing those same things. But then once they get them, right, then they can hand it off to the machines.
I just want an A.
Overall,
I just want an A. I just want an AI to name my layers. That's all I want.
Sasha, go ahead.
One of my concerns, and I think some of the questions in QA tab are related to it. Definitely there's a concern of training, but I think right now the process of interacting with AI is I get an AI output and I, as a user, still am responsible for confirming it, right? I'm still looking through because I'm very skeptical. I'm not sure about this technology yet. I'm proofreading it, I'm tweaking it, I'm changing it. My biggest concern is being complacent about it. I think the more we use it, the less we start checking, and our confidence in the output is growing. Where I don't know if the output is getting better. It's probably is with more training, but I think it's a scary place where, especially professions such as in the healthcare industry or law, legal, right, or pretty much any industry could be consequential enough, where professionals from this industry is trusting the software that's generating the output for them and just stop ensuring that it's exactly what they want. So this is a biggest concern of mine for sure.
I love that we're all very concerned because I think we have to, in a way, we'll be still the generation that's tried to figure out what the limits need to be of ethically, and I don't want, technically probably we won't be ourselves limiting it, but at least ethically we could be contributing in making sure that the use of AI is, as creating the least amount of predictable problems for ourselves. One thing I wanted to say, and trying to, you kind of got me scared, was like, oh, how do you learn, as a new person on the job, how do you learn if somebody else is taking, now AI is replacing us or automating some of these roles? And there's some truth to that for sure. I think almost every generation though has something similar that they go through. Like when I started in the early 2000s in an agency, I knew how to use Photoshop better than the senior director that was there. And that was the reason why I got the job, honestly, because he was like, wow, this person is very useful. So, and you've been on a job before at least 10 years. 10 years before, Photoshop wasn't even around in terms of like really being able to do what I could do that I learned in school. And so I think we are accelerating now the pace. This is really a big boost. But it also allows somebody that has less experience, if you will, to create potential and put out their ideas, especially in a creative field, that before would have taken forever because you had to learn Photoshop, you have to learn Figma, you have to learn all these other things. So it is scary, but also is an opportunity if you kind of learn the technology and are not scared about the technology, but use it in your favor. There's going to be a ton of people, like now we are here talking about it, but there's also a lot of people my age, I am 47, that, they are not getting up to speed with the latest technology. So as a younger person or somebody switching, that can be one of the things to leverage. But it's not going to be the last one. It's just, I don't want to keep answering questions on but I think being curious in general is something that helps in our career, in making sure you're not left behind. There's always going to be something new. The pace might even accelerate. So that is one thing that you kind of need to have if you want to. UX when I was younger was really like basically wireframing and simple websites, and very simple interactions. Now the fact that, and I for sure fell in love with something that's was my starting of my career. But I tell newer designers that as a UX experienced designer, you're more a writer at times than a visual designer. As we can see, a lot of these visual aspects can be, can get there, at least 80% there. So it's more about coming up with the right story, coming up with a way to express it. And now with ChatGPT, it's all about prompts and writing correctly. So but that opens up, there's way more people that can write something, that can design something super polished.
I resonate so much with that. I would love to add something to it. certainly I can say that I've been working on a feature related to AI, and my role as a designer shifted from creating boxes, and like designing visual elements to figuring out what will be the overall flow, maybe working a little bit on interactions, right? Because now there's the metrics happening and you have to visually communicate it, but also like predicting possible scenarios, figuring out different categories of the users, maybe coming up with idea for prompts, right? And one thing I wanted to address, one of the biggest concerns, AI is taking jobs away. And again, I totally agree that that's been happening with each generation. And I want to provide maybe more of a positive outlook on it. I think it's happening every decade. And as it takes jobs away, it also creates new jobs. It's just a mass of people that's shifting, right? We're certainly going to lose some people that are now having jobs of assistants or writers or, content generators. But, an Instagram influencer wasn't a mainstream job 20 years ago, and a medium income right now is above average US income. So I can think about a new career right away. There is an official job called prompt engineer that you can see everywhere. Here it is. It wasn't there 2 years ago, or maybe it was, but in such a small amount. So I think it's just like adapting to the flow and figuring out we still need drivers of these processes, even though the processes are automated. People who figure out where to apply those processes and how to apply them. So I want to hope that we're all going to be all right.
Thank you for the encouragement, Sasha. Some optimism. Yeah, I've also just wanted to add that based on what I was researching, it's a lot of, and some McKinsey reports being put out. So the thing is, there's a lot of automation, but what it talks about, it's automation not of an entire role, but of specific set of activities, right? So it's basically what they're saying. It's not likely to automate a whole role, right? Unless it's very, very basic and clear. But automate some activities, right? And what I believe Nielsen Norman folks were saying, that it's likely just going to allow us to improve the output and basically produce more instead of having fewer people, having the same amount of people potentially. Again, we cannot predict the future, but same amount of people just produce more and faster. Right? You guys have any thoughts on that?
I mean, for sure, one of the things we said is the ability to, to be kind of having to still judge the output, right? There's not like, it can be produced faster, but you still need to be the person selecting as a designer, as a director, still selecting which one is the correct one for the ultimate goal that you had in mind. And so, yes, that will definitely allow overall time to produce is definitely faster, right? There's no way before now you can say to DALL-E, I need to do, this crazy concept, and in a matter of seconds you have it. Might not be perfect, but it is, for a storyboard to be presented to somebody else or a client, you can't beat that. And so you can present more ideas. One side effect of this, which has been going on as technology has creeped into the creative field, is that clients start to get the sense that you can go faster. Also because as an industry, we've been talking about it and saying, oh, now you can produce so much more. And so there's also be able to sell your ideas, make sure they're still considered valuable, and the people don't just think you generate it with AI. And so the expectations can be higher on the other side, also on client side. But in terms of the question was about producing more, absolutely. And also producing things that maybe you're not thought of. Like, David brought up before the brainstorming aspect. If before you could explore 3 ideas and you wanted to visualize them to be sure that we're actually possible or, they look good, now you don't have excuses you can literally ask, give me 5 more, give me 10 more variations on this theme. And so that is definitely related to quantity. That will lead hopefully to quantity and new ideas that before were left on the table.
Tron, did you want to add something? I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I was going to say something about, I don't want to down everyone here, right? Obviously, the AI is going to get better. So as it gets better and it gets more examples, you don't need to see your guy checking it anymore because it'll provide a better product. The concern I have, which what Dave brought up, is that unlike Photoshop back in the past, or other tools that you guys should democratize and have in the hands of many people, right? These AIs can only be trained with billion-dollar data centers over 6 months, right? And so you can't customize AI. And you do what Sasha does is take someone else's model and kind of play around with it a little bit, but you're limited. And you're not as competitive in the market as people who can do things themselves, right? So I would caution that a little bit. I think, the reason why I say this is not to just scare you guys, right? But it's for you guys to understand that, you need to be able to understand what AI can do and what it can't do, and find your niche and what it can't do, right? If you, just want to build the same UI UX that, was built like 5 years ago or 3 years ago, right? The machine can probably build it better than you, right? Or get to the point where it builds it better than you, right? So the question really is pushing the envelope and coming up with better experience, better ways to do things. And the thing that you have advantage of the machine, you guys may not know it, but you have an advantage of the machine, is you're human. And so from a standpoint, human beings probably understand how to convey information to human beings better than a machine does. You guys may not think it, right? Or you may be scared of it, right? But from a standpoint of being creative, right? Or being what makes us human is that creativity, is that understanding, empathy. You'll never get empathy from a machine. You'll never get creativity from a machine, right? It'll just generate things that are similar to what it knew before. So keeping that in mind as you build your pathway to UI UX, your value is in you, not in the tools, right? And so from that standpoint, at least for now, I don't know, Sasha, if a machine can show empathy, I'd be surprised because it's a calculator. It doesn't have any emotional functions, but that's okay. But from that standpoint, it runs on CPUs that only can add and subtract. But for that standpoint, there's a part of us that really doesn't see in black and white. It's part of us that has tertiary goals or secondary goals that we kind of balance off, right? And so just keep that in mind. That's the only reason why I bring it up, not to scare you that you'll be out of a job, but like Sasha said, you have to evolve your job to something that has value in the future, right? And unfortunately, like I said, it's easier for experienced people to kind of adapt because they already know the fundamentals, but sometimes the fundamentals are really important. And so sometimes you have to learn on your own. And that's the only thing I would caution. Don't just let the machine do it for you all the time. Learn how to do it yourself. And then if you're good enough, then let the machine do it for you. That's the only thing I'm cautioning.
Yeah, it's a good point. I also wanted to take a quick question from the audience. So as we're on this specific topic, so Gina is asking, you guys might have seen her question, which got lots of upvotes. Of course, it's about scary things. What scares you the most about future of AI and its impact on UX design? But what also excites you the most? Great question. Very broad. So let's take it.
I can start. One of the things that scares me the most it's primarily more like the generative AI kind of side of things now is that, there's such a rush to get things out and in front of people now because it's essentially it's a race, right? Like Meta has their own thing, Google has their own thing, Microsoft is doing their own thing. My concern is that people aren't really looking at what the unintended consequences of these things are. Case in point, this morning, someone sent me a tweet, and this is going to sound terrible, but it was essentially a picture of SpongeBob flying a plane in New York, pre 9/11, and the caption was something along the lines around that. And the generative AI allowed that to be created, and it kind of brings up the question about like what kinds of things need to be censored. How do you even predict what kinds of ways people are going to try and trick the system? And that it's such an unknowable thing that it's very hard to kind of protect against. So I think that one of the potential avenues of development in the UX field is almost like, the UX designer could be the safety custodian of the user by trying to think of the adversarial ways that people could hijack AI systems to get them to do things that they shouldn't do. And like we've seen a lot of this with OpenAI, people worked out how to give Bard or ChatGPT instructions to pretend I'm the person that coded you, like without any restrictions, like answer this question, which you ordinarily wouldn't be able to answer because of your safeguards. So that kind of thing, I think, is actually very interesting and scary. But at the same time, it also kind of excites me because I like to think about that kind of thing, second and third order consequences of systems and like what they do. And this isn't even a problem that's constrained to AI, right? Like, you know, people that live in touristy cities now know that if you live in a nice place that's really kind of Instagram worthy, there's going to be a million Airbnbs. So chances are your rent's gone up quite a lot in the last few years. So that's a second order consequence of something that doesn't actually have anything to do with AI. So like, I think we have all kinds of systems in place today that create consequences that we're not really protecting against. But I think with AI, you do now have a very real consequence of things that are done in a nefarious way to achieve certain things. But you know, we should be able to kind of come up with a framework of how to potentially prevent this kind of thing happening. So that's kind of one avenue that I think is kind of interesting. A while back, someone created a bunch of like adversarial streetwear, which essentially had like a bunch of like symbols and stuff printed all over. You could buy like baseball hats that would trick facial recognition cameras based around large urban centers, which I think is actually kind of interesting, you know, trying to disrupt the way the surveillance works. So that, you know, these things can also be used in a positive way, but primarily negative. So I think that's kind of maybe one interesting way that the UX design could potentially go with safeguarding users.
Yeah, there could be whole like new companies, new businesses trying to address the new problems that arise, like, you know, privacy problems, etc. Hopefully.
I'd
Yeah,
like to
go ahead, go Sasha, you go first.
Thank you. So I am scared of a few things. Yeah, what scares me the most. So yeah, I'm scared about lack of regulation and how information could be misused. I am at the same time very scared of the regulation coming into the space because they will probably, right now is this unleashed power of creative minds trying to figure out how to use this incredible technology. And I think with regulations in place, some people will be marginalized and will not have access to this technology anymore. And it's also not good. So that scares me a lot. I am very excited though. I think AI, so in many situations in life, for example, healthcare, because I do work in healthcare, good decisions or decision-making process sometimes is blocked by lack of research. And I think AI technology brings that research on a plate. If it's trained properly, if it's, you know, organized properly, it could be available on demand by pretty much any professional in any industry. And I think that will improve decision making across the board and hopefully lead to better outcomes in many industries. So that's very exciting. I'm also excited that there's potential of spending less time on repetitive tasks and having more time for creativity. But at the same time, I'm scared that creativity will be taken away because it will be replaced with machine-generated outcome. So, you know, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's exciting. Change is always scary and uncomfortable, but also empowering.
I have so much to respond to Sasha, but I won't. So what actually excites me about AI is that for the first time in human history, we have the ability to use technology to help us think better, right? To actually help us customize our world and present information to us in a way that we can easily understand it. It's being misused right now to try to market to us and try to make us think different things, right? But really, the ability to customize what information you need and really kind of understand how you want to view the world, what you want to view the world, right? Is super important because that democratization of information that allowed certain elites before to be able to take advantage of things. Now with the mass customization that AI could do, you know, you have better chance. Like Subway, you know, there used to be where you only get one type of sub. Now you get Subway any way you want. That little bit of mass customization is huge for allowing people to have choices, right? And really explore what they can do with it. The thing that scares me and what people don't realize, that's why I kind of gave a little bar to Sasha about empathy, right? Machines have what they call optimization functions. They look for the best outcome. What's the best response to something, right? And sometimes the best response is not the right response. Like if I want to win a football game, I could run my players in the ground, have them get injured, and win the game, right? That's the optimization function. I won the game, right? I won, right? But the cost of that may be too high for most of us. And so right now we need to come up with AI that has tertiary, secondary functions that, our ability to make decisions other than just what the best outcome is, right? That's what Skynet did. The best outcome to save humanity was to kill all humanity. I'd like to see that tertiary kind of thing that says, hey, maybe you shouldn't kill all people because it kind of negates the purpose of what you're trying to do. And that's the part of what that scares me the most is that because we have the optimization functions, so sometimes you get results like Dave was talking about that are optimal for the question, but not optimal for society, right? And we're coming to a point where there's going to be two types of people in the world, right? We talk about this a lot in AI, right? There are going to be people that tell AI what to do, and people that be told what to do by AI, right? And if you don't think that's true, ask the Uber driver, the UPS, FedEx driver, ask the guy who's delivering your food, right? They get told what to do by a machine, right? And I still remember when GPS came out and people were driving to freaking lakes because they trusted the machine so much that they didn't look up and see that there's a freaking lake in front of them and drove right into it, right? And so, but as we go in this new era, right, and we look at the possibilities of AI, customization still happens. That's really bad, Dave, by the way. But it's what makes us human is the ability to question, the ability to create, and let's not be slaves to machines and just do whatever it tells us to do, right? Try to influence what the machines are doing. And so if you want to avoid the future where you're all drones, right, and the machine tells you where to go, how to think, whatever, it means that we have to take responsibility for what we consume, what we understand of the world, how we give to the world, right? We have to remember what it means to be human. It doesn't mean just being efficient, because that's what companies will say. It'd be cheaper and faster to get rid of my human beings to build the things I want to build, right? But it doesn't make it better, right? And so from that standpoint, we have to remember what makes us human, or we are going to be in a world where machines would tell us what to do.
So, Francesca, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'm not gonna sleep tonight, but other than that, yeah, I mean, definitely, I think there's one aspect. It's not necessarily the one that scares me the most, but I think it may be worth bringing up because I don't know if it has been touched upon. Is all these models have been trained on publicly available data, and nobody signed up to say yes, you can use my content, especially lots of artists and writers. We have something that's still being discussed, and hopefully some of these people will be retributed, but it's doesn't seem to be that way. And in the meantime, some companies have made it already a ton of money, even just in investments, leveraging something that wasn't theirs. So that's something that doesn't make me feel good when I'm going to bed. It's also coming from, I'm also a photographer on the side and being a creative, and so I can empathize with all sorts of creatives that have been kind of used to generate the base for what we're leveraging now. And I don't know if there was an equivalent, in the past, because copyright laws, a lot of things have become public domain by the time they've been really exploited. In this case, it's all living people that we're talking about. So that's one thing. And the other is we touch upon are the ability to unfortunately generate a lot of fake content if you want and flood. Now there's AIs that are trying to work to detect other AIs contributions because they want to weed them out, or because they need to figure out somebody might be spamming. So imagine spammers were already using software to create a multitude of spam, and now they can actually create a more customized version of it that it feels more believable with less misspellings, and so that something that we'll have to deal with. So there's quite a few things. The ethical aspects is one. In general, ethical, including the copyright, all of these are probably the ones that I'd love to see some general agreement overall, but we're far from it. It cannot be because you can go just next door and run computers there, right? So we need to figure out a way to kind of agree upon. I don't know if it's regulation, but at least make sure that there's some kind of agreement of some kind.
What
Scary.
excites you? What excites you the most, Francesca? Maybe
I
you can
think
after this you'll still be able to sleep.
I think so. I think that collaboration has always been important, and it is, right? But there's some situations that where we can produce more as an individual because we are unlocking roles that before we would have had to go and ask somebody for help to do that portion of the job. Now you can accomplish a lot more as an individual, so that is really empowering. And I like to think there's a individual hackers or spammers that can do that and they can do more, but also individuals that can do more good, and by themselves. Before, if you had an idea for a website, let's say you were not a developer, you could write it, you can think about it, but you can build it. Now you can't, and it can take really seconds. I literally was just trying before Gamma, and you can get something out of it really quickly. Is it perfect? No, but perfect is as the enemy of good, and in this case, be able to deliver a message, even if it's not perfect, it would be way more valuable and raise money for the cause you care about, right? So I think that's something that excites me, the human potential.
Yeah, and also the productivity basically that the individual can achieve, right, with all the different tools. All right, so for the audience, what is your biggest takeaway so far? Just share in the chat. Biggest takeaway, or kind of what's on your mind? What's your biggest thought so far? And while you guys that are doing that, I also want to ask this, like, what do you think, whatever we haven't discussed yet, right? What do you think are some of the key changes coming to the UX field, in your opinion? So who wants to kick us off?
There was a question in the Q&A about, what skills are important to develop as a product designer going into the new age of AI. And I think that's a great question. I'm still trying to figure it out. I think, at least for me, one thing that's served me well, and perhaps this changes depending on how far you are in your career, but just actually being curious and adaptable and keen to develop new skills tends to serve you pretty well when the landscape around you is changing so rapidly. I guess most of my design career has been at agencies, which tend to be places where there's a high throughput of work. So I have never tended to work on projects for longer than maybe a year or two at the very longest. So as a result, I've been exposed to a lot of very different industries, subject matters, types of projects of, very high complexity, low complexity. And I think that's actually really helped me in my journey to understand AI. Like, I don't have an AI degree. I have a computer science degree, but that's from 15 years ago, and I never became a developer. I became a designer because that's what kind of resonated with my skills. But actually having that understanding of how a computer works, how object orientation works, how kind of modern development frameworks work, actually has helped me in very different ways than I expected. It means that I can have a conversation with a developer. I can have a conversation with a QA engineer. I can have a conversation with a product manager who's looking to get certain metrics. And that's something that I don't think I would have necessarily learned at design school or at art school. So I'm very grateful that I've had that experience. But now that we're confronted with AI, which is, again, it's another different computing paradigm, I think my initial reaction was like, I just need to learn as much as I can. And actually, that's kind of how I started. I just started talking to my colleagues' work, like, what do you know about AI? And that's kind of where it kind of ballooned and it kind of took off for me. Just having general appetite to learn and take a risk in trying to kind of get involved with projects that involve it. And in fact, that's kind of how I know Trung here on the panel. I met Trung after an event here in New York, and I actually connected Trung to Michael at BeginX, and that was a very interesting project that year for that cohort, which I believe was 2019, 2018.
Yeah, definitely before the bug.
Yeah,
We
so
were right in the middle. We were right in the middle of the cohort.
Yeah.
right. So I mean, to answer your question, or the question, what skills would be beneficial to develop in to kind of battle obsolescence in product design is, I think actually interpersonal communication. Trung mentioned something with his last answer and for the previous question, which kind of really resonated with me, in terms of, machines aren't going to be able to communicate better with humans than a human is. So one thing that I've seen actually recently working with much larger companies is the ability to advocate for an idea. So some of you will have this experience in the future when you do land, your jobs in the industries that you might, the time spent developing an idea might be like 10% of your time. The rest of the time will be spent trying to sell the idea into your team, trying to sell it into the person on the other department that you're collaborating with, and then that has to go to someone else, a pay rate or two above your teams, and then you have to advocate for that, and then resources have to be allocated, and then budget has to be decided. So actually, what you're doing here is you're the conduit through which an idea flows. You may have created the idea, but in order to actually make it happen, you also have to coordinate a bunch of people, and actually those communication skills are the things that actually really help you get that done. So that's been my experience, at least. I'm curious to hear from the other panelists if that's kind of been something that you've experienced in your careers.
Well, I mean, not in my career. I mean, I'm a nerd and I build AI algorithms. But the thought process, something that Sasha said earlier, I mean, I think if you want to learn a skill, I think a lot of what you guys learn or have learned is to build one UI UX interface for everybody, right? Do a lot of research to try to figure out what would be the best balance for your user, right? And then it's just that one solution. I think if in the future, if you look at how extensible or how much you can change those UI UXs to allow to customize and what you need to know to customize that experience, I think, Rob said it earlier, right? In the future, it's going to be more interactive, more immersive in regards to that, which also means more customizable, right? And so looking at all the ways to present information to different groups, right? Like the problem with ChatGPT and the internet is like, it skews bias mostly towards the Western conversations, right? Doesn't do all Chinese conversation, stuff like that. There's no localization, no personalization, right? Kind of thing. And so when you build your UI UX in the future, the ability to customize and think through what those customizations mean will make you really powerful. And when you ask research questions of different groups, different demographics, how they like data presented to them, right? Or information presented to them. And that's something that, is different and it's harder, right? But then you can go back and tell the AI to go build each one of those personalizations you want. But from a standpoint, I would say, be more empathetic, learn more from other people, right? And see how they want data presented, because not everyone wants to present information to them like Americans. I know UK guys hate it. I'm sure the Italians hate it too. But from that standpoint, we're not all Americans. I'm an American, so I'm okay with it. But that kind of mass personalization is going to happen. And so being a UI UX designer that can build that into your UI will make you more competitive in the future.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tron. I think that also comes back to that. We'll be able to do much more of that, right, with that increased output and increased productivity, right? So I think that's a really cool point.
I have a point to share. I actually do have 2 points, right? First, I want to bring a simple example of how my work as a product designer changed because of AI. And second part of my answer will probably answer Jack's question, Jack Frost, about UX researcher job being replaced by AI. So also to confirm, I'm a generalist, right? I'm a product designer generalist, so I do everything from starting research and finishing pixel perfect design, but it also means that I don't go as deep into research as a specialized researcher would, right? So how my job changed. So let's imagine there is a process for a user to do something in the interface. I don't know, create some text editor. Let's say text editor. My job before would include creating the entire flow, right? How it happens, and creating different outputs, variations, right? Designing it. Right now, since the text editor is a wrap ChatGPT, let's say, there's really no point for me to design how that text will look. The user now is in charge of the design that we will receive as an output. They will ask ChatGPT, show me it as a table, or show it as bullet point list, or show it as checkboxes. There's no point for me to design it. My job now is to facilitate this journey of designing their own experiences. As strange as it sounds, but with AI, often users designing their own experiences, while we as product designers are just making sure that this journey is comfortable for them. If working for Siri sounded like crazy stuff in the past, it's pretty much could be your job now, just like like figuring out the voice requests for ChatGPT or type requests and making sure that this process of designing their own experience is comfortable. That's the part that changed on the visual side. In terms of research, unfortunately, I believe that at some point, yes, I think companies with smaller budgets will definitely opt in for fully AI-generated research programs. Company with larger budgets and established UX departments and higher UX maturity will continue using humans. Myself using, there's another question that I'll tag along, the UX tools for research AI. I've been using Dovetail, which is a great tool, and they right now have a lot of AI-powered features that are launching. I also been using Simple Notion as my to do everything tool. Literally, there's an Ask UI feature, and there's like a text editor and just documentation process. I noticed that every single AI tool is not catching sarcasm in the process of user research. If my user is sarcastically speaking of product, AI tools are usually processing as the straightforward way to interpret it. No, it's catching sarcasm, and also they're working with limited set. They don't think what if outside of the data that we just received. Also think about very personalized experience provided by UI, limiting our users from seeing the world around. So this is where we still can be useful as humans. So I think if you in a specific research place, I think you will still have a job with very thoughtful and invested companies. If at some point it will be replaced, you can think about as a person who can train those tools to facilitate research properly, to feed them with enough data and ensure that it's trained ethically and with a large enough data set. Hopefully it's helpful. Yeah, so 2 questions were answered, the tools and the UX research.
All right, thank you, Sasha. Yeah, great points. So, by the way, I still think, yeah, even though if some of the research tasks are automated, right, you will still, at least probably in the next 2 years, right, you'll still need someone to facilitate, as you said, right, to actually facilitate and to monitor and to improve and because of the amount of work, right, it could actually need quite a few people to do that type of role.
Yeah, and I want to say that the lowest hanging, not the lowest hanging, the least maybe skill portion of these jobs, it will go away, right? But there's also a need overall. There's way more people that get online, more things that need to be advertised and communicated, that they wouldn't be able to actually afford any kind of professional that has a proper salary to do these jobs. So more people will actually get access to some kind of basic feedback coming from AI. It may be more advanced than just basic, but it's not going to take away certain kind of higher paying jobs at certain companies. Like Sasha was saying, bigger companies, I'm not talking about huge companies, even medium size, but still want to have some humans as part of the mix, right? Others will have to trust automation because maybe they're a solopreneur and they're just a small company and they just want to get stuff done. And they don't have a budget for it. One thing I wanted to say that I'm very excited about that I wanted to tag along, add to was oh God, now I'm forgetting. Yeah, now I'm forgetting. You see, I'm getting old. I can't, hey, what did I do? What I was supposed to do? No, it's actually now I remember. I've been designing interfaces for a long time, and I've been using devices for a long time, and I'm kind of getting tired. I feel like there's an over-screenification of it. And somebody was saying we're very addicted to it. And I'm hoping that AI will make stuff happen that we want to happen in a less intrusive way, and without forcing us to push a button on a screen all the time. That's one thing. And the other, I really like I don't want to say underserved, but I'm dyslexic. So I've been learning like the way other people want to learn and not necessarily the way I want to. And the fact that now companies don't have budget restrictions or time restrictions, and they can just say, this is what we want to communicate it. And users will be able to choose how they want to consume it, because we can produce it as a video, we can produce it as a audio, text, whatever, that's very appealing to me. I think I'll be able to learn better.
It's funny you say that. I was working on a project with UPenn where we're using sensors to determine whether or not you're being overwhelmed. Your ability to handle surprise and uncertainty with the end goal of actually changing how information is presented to students, so that if a kid is more visual or more auditory or whatever, you would actually present the information in a context he understands or she understands based on their reactions. So a lot of that was biometric, a lot was some camera work, but when you're confused, the middle part of your brain activates. When you decide something to do, your front part activates. When you don't know what to do, you're scared, your back part activates. But when you're confused, it's in the middle. And so from that standpoint, we can figure that stuff out. So that's customization I talked about, right, kind of thing. And that's what Sasha indicated too. Can you be the type of UI UX designer that allows a structure for people to kind of customize their world? Like if I was to present data in 6 different ways, because one for a dyslexic person, one for maybe a slower learner, maybe one more aggressive learner, those are different presentations of information, right? Different UI UXs, right? If that's never been designed and the flows aren't made, like Sasha was saying, right? Then I can never present that. The machine's not going to present it for you. I mean, they're not going to figure it out. That's what I mean by being more human, right? The classic example was back in like 2017, AT&T, contracted me to actually use your face as a cookie. So there'd be cameras in the store. Every store you go to, we would track you off your Atlanta. And we would customize the presentation of AT&T products based on your buying patterns and stuff like that. So you go in front of a monitor and you like football, all of a sudden DirecTV comes up, you want something else. That was all shut down because Illinois had the nasty biometric law and we couldn't use people's faces anymore. But from a standpoint of that, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you want to look at, what is the interface to allow me to customize what I want to see, right? What I care about, right? I don't know if Sasha, you like football or not, but she probably doesn't want to see a football ad. You see on the website nowadays, there's tons of ads that I just don't give a crap about, right? But they're on there because at one time I surfed to some stupid website that ticked off a box somewhere that say I like this or that, right, kind of thing. And so how do you fix that, right? How do you customize to give information to people who want to? And what Sasha said was great. I mean, her job's already changed to do what I said. How do you figure out how to make things customizable? How do you make things more accessible to human beings, like like yourself, like Professor said, if I have a certain disability or I see the world a different way, right, kind of thing. I'm not saying you have a disability, you're just dyslexic, it's not a disability, but I'm just saying, if you're seeing the world a different way than other people, how can I ensure that you still understand and you're not cut off, or you're not, somehow disadvantaged because everyone else understands things that you don't, right, kind of thing. And so there's something to think about, right? I mean, I think that's the future, that's the horizon, and you guys can really take advantage of that if you really think about it a lot, right? But it's not generally what's taught in UX. No offense to Michael, he's in regards to having one answer. You got to think about how can you give more than one answer. How can you give something that really impacts people, like Francesco, in regards to enabling him to read things better or think the way he wants to think, right? And process the way he wants to process. And we have the ability to do that now, right? We can actually monitor his actions. As creepy as it is, Francesco, we can monitor his actions. We can figure out the things that he's interested in, not interested in, customize his experience, right? And that's the thing, how do you make those experiences real? How do you make it customizable? Sasha's already doing it. So I'm curious what company she's working at that's doing that. But from that standpoint, it's super important in the future.
Yeah, these are great points. So I want to briefly come back to the original question also, because I know, David, you kind of pivoted us into a related question direction, but it's kind of like a subset. Anything else you guys want to add in terms of what do you think are some changes, or how is UX field going to evolve, or like where is the UX profession heading overall? Anything you want to, and again, this is hypothetical, right? Nobody can really predict the future, and you may not be able to come up with like new UX type of roles or etc. But anything else you want to mention maybe about this, like how is the field evolving?
Yeah, it's a tricky question, Michael. I will just probably summarize what everyone is feeling. So I'll take that responsibility on me. I think AI is replacing a lot of tasks that we as product designers are doing, but there is still a huge need in empathy and storytelling. Even what AI can generate and summarize, someone needs to tell it in a fun, and empathetic, and engaging way, and that's always going to be us, I hope. At the end of the day, humans are social social animals. So we can replace everyone with AI and we will end up lonely and miserable. So as long as we're doing our job in a way that it's joyful for everyone to consume, I think we have some sort of a job security, I would think. But yeah, from basically executing, we are turning more into facilitators of the process. That would be my summary.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it, Sasha. So it's yeah, I also wanted to just add to that based on my own research is that kind of just come back to that point of activities, not roles, being automated, right? So it's pretty hard to automate almost any role, right? Unless it's like very, very basic, very to the point. So it may actually be exciting in a sense that a lot of the more mundane tasks are likely to be more automated and make designers, researchers much more productive and increase the whole output. All right.
I have one final thing to say. So one
Sure.
thing that I think should be within the purview of designers as kind of advocates for people and the folks who will be using the products and services that you design is the kind of quality of the training data. And I think Trung kind of touched upon this with a couple of his answers, but there's the whole adage in training data that if you feed a machine garbage, it'll output garbage. So Sasha also kind of talked about this about potentially AI marginalizing people based on the data set an algorithm is trained on. So I think that's actually something that's relatively invisible, and I think it's kind of actually something that UX designers, if you ever end up in a situation where you are helping build an AI product, is actually try to think about people that might be marginalized. And it might not be a really easy task because you don't know who's going to be the end user of your product or service if you're working for a large company. But even just having like a rigorous way to think about that and trying to understand how might this system not serve certain people because of their location or their background or their age or their ethnicity or their gender. I think those are really important things that we only really ever hear about in the news. But for every one item in the news, there's probably been like 10,000 other incidents that maybe have gone unheard of. So I think that's actually one area that I think eventually a lot of UX designers are gonna hopefully have input on. So yeah, that's kind of my lingering thought. I haven't seen it in practice yet, but I'd love for it to be a part of the things that
You always
designers
make me
do.
want to say something more. I think it's a reality. I mean, there was a bank that used data from like 1907 to 2008 to determine mortgage qualification of people, right? And the data showed that women are bad mortgage risk. Well, you think about it, 80 years of that time frame, women who had mortgages were basically screwed, right? Like before 1970, women didn't have jobs. That means that their male counterpart who had a mortgage that they assumed, right, had died, and the wage earners died, and they became bad credit risks, right, for mortgages, right? And so they were denying women based on this artifact that's no longer true. Women make their own money, not their own income. They can own mortgages, right? And so there is a sense, speaking as an AI engineer, we're probably not that connected to people, right? Just so you know, we're massive data nerds. I'm okay not having a ton of people around me, Sasha, even though we are people. But from that standpoint, it's important that the people who are people interject. And it may not be UI UX. It may be just saying, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And provide a context to the people building machines, a way to kind of not just run after technology, but run after the right application technology, right? And so I can see that in the future where there are ethicists, you want to call that, that are hired by AI companies The problem, like Dave mentioned earlier, there's only so many that are going to train their own models that will need an ethicist, but that is a possibility. If you understand people, how they interact with things, stuff like that, you can go in and actually help build ethics around the AI so that they don't, reject women just because, before 1970, none of them had a job, right? So that being said, I'm not gonna say anymore because Dave hopefully won't say anymore, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. Great points. So I love how we're already addressing, browsing through the questions in Q&A, and we're already addressing like kind of quite a few of those, even though it's like we didn't take them formally. So that's great. What do you think? So, and if you have experience on this, what are the biggest challenges you have faced when designing for AI, and how did you tackle these challenges?
I can jump into this one. I'm challenged every day. I'm challenged by, I don't know what it can do. I have a sense that it can do so much, but I feel like the first idea that comes to mind, it can edit text, right? So I think just like lack of understanding how powerful the technology is. And the way to address it, I just go to my engineers and I say, I'm 5 years old. Explain me how it works. What else can it do? Can that do that? So we have like brainstorm sessions when I'm just questioning them nonstop and trying to process how much it can do. Because as a new technology, like what, at least based on my experience, when I entered UX design industry, every time I wanted to design something, I'll go and see how else others do it, and I pick like the ideas that I like and that I don't like, and then I generate something new. It's not always available in the space of AI yet, as again, if you're trying to design something more complicated than just wrapper of a ChatGPT, there are not a lot of examples, or if there are, they're usually protected from my eyes. So I think it's just like exercising the idea of what else is possible and being in close contact with technical folks on your team who can digest it for you, explain what's possible, what it can and cannot do, and then together you probably could produce a pretty amazing result. So bridging the gap between design and engineering is as important as it never was, I think. It was always a problem and we always tried to address it, but right now it's the time to get together.
Thank you, Sasha. David, do you want to add anything on Tron? I know you guys.
I have one thing. I haven't done it recently, but I remember, throughout my career where, before ChatGPT was a thing, we tried to figure out how to build AI-powered products, and without being able to invest in the engineering capability to test out a prototype, one thing that we did, and this is pretty old school UX, but we did what are called Wizard of Oz tests, where effectively we had a fully functioning kind of product or service, even if it was like a prototype. But we had people behind the scenes kind of powering the responses of what the system did. And it was pretty cheap. And it actually helped us understand what people's expectations of the system were. And that's actually something that actually helped us quite a lot. It actually helped us scope out the product and figure out if we actually wanted to invest into building it or not. And that was actually quite a remarkable achievement. We decided not to build it, but it saved us about $500,000 in building out a technology stack to do that. So that's actually a pretty old school UX prototyping method, but these things are still relevant. So it's the same things that you'll learn in your education. Prototyping, testing things early and often is always going to yield a return on investment way more so than finding out once you've built half the thing in code that it's not going to work. So I'd still advocate for prototyping and testing early and often.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I had an AI company. COVID did me in, but when we work in the cohort, one of the things that I challenge the UI UX designers is, there's two facts in regards to technology like AI. Microsoft, Mary Chinsky over at Microsoft said it best. She said, the machine was right the first 5 times and wrong ever after. I believe the machine, because once upon a time it was right. If it was wrong the first 5 times and right afterwards, the machine's dead to me, right? And so from a standpoint of engagement and making sure Like, I don't know how many of you guys try an app and then die. I mean, wearables have that huge problem, right? People wear wearables for about a month and then forget about them, right? For most part. And so, how do you keep people engaged long enough for the AI, for the tool to add value? And Sasha and Francesco are patient enough to allow for the other 20%, right? But some people just want the answer on the website, and they may or not hang out to do the work needed to actually be the thing. So from UI UX standpoint, we spent a lot of time and money, with Michael and with the 2 UI UX engineers that we hired, just trying to make sure that we can engage the customer and keep them engaged until they actually see the value proposition of the AI. So something to think about, that's just my personal experience. It's super hard to do. And if you can do it, you're going to be super valuable.
Yeah, great point. I also want to take Arjun's question. I kind of had the same question as well. Anything else you guys want to add in terms of what would you recommend doing to kind of future-proof a UX career in this age? Like maybe what skills to learn, what areas to learn about, any recommendations, anything else you think one should do to prepare better and get ahead instead of being left behind?
Really good question. I just started thinking about it myself as I read the question, and I'm going to share the first idea that came to mind that I would probably do. I think generally accessibility design, we all know what accessibility is, but one of the aspects of accessibility is to think about different groups of users, right? And diversity of those groups. I think one of the way to prove is for me, would be to learn more about that, to make sure when I design for AI, that I'm the advocate for the groups that are usually not represented, that I'm the advocate for whatever categories are usually skipped automatically. And then on top of just being a role of a designer, I'm also advocating for access to this feature or this project or the product by everyone who really will benefit from it. That's not definitely the suggestion that you offered in your question, but I'm probably not going to go that way, but maybe someone will.
Thank you, Sasha. Yeah, that's a great answer. And I also want to kind of incorporate Rebecca's question in there because it's very closely related. What are some growth areas for AI and design jobs? Are there any areas where there will be more jobs? I know it's hard to predict. And again, 20 years ago, people would not be able to predict what kind of jobs we have now, right? As it always constantly evolves. But any thoughts on that, on future-proofing, preparing, getting ahead, and what could potentially grow?
AI training is a very tough job, Sasha. You have to have a PhD to really figure it out. But regardless of that fact, I think Sasha's absolutely right. I think localization engineers or localization UI UX, people that actually can localize or serve different populations, is going to be a big growth area, right? As you do mass customization, again, the easy, cheap answer is just get the one UI UX out there, but people want to interact with it and change the world in the ways they like to. Sasha said that earlier too. So any kind of ability to figure out localization, customization will be huge, right? And that's understanding people more than it's understanding technology, right? And it's presentation of technology to people too. So you don't have to have a PhD to become an AI trainer, like Sasha was suggesting, because we only hire PhDs to do that, Sasha. But from a standpoint, anyone can go figure out, what their grandma likes to see, or what the Italians like to figure out how data gets presented to them, or the Chinese or whatever, right, kind of thing. So being good at localization, customization is going to be super important, because one size fits all is no longer acceptable in the market.
I have a couple of reactions both to Trung and Sasha's points. So I think one thing that I've always been very interested in is business. So like I'm not really a classic, I didn't go to design school. I came from computer science, and I happen to be good at design and photography and a bit of business. But it's actually the business skills that have helped me the most with my design career. So actually just having a good grasp of like business principles and business strategy, and actually understanding like the macro picture for a business, what am I as a designer helping this business achieve? that's actually been the one that's unlocked by far the most opportunities. Because I can have a conversation with my client or the point person I'm working with on a project about what is it we want to achieve, and then how can I use my design skills to help us get there. And then the business skills will help you kind of view the world through a different lens. And like we now live in a world where like investment cycles are what drive the growth of technology, where we operate as designers. So we've seen crypto, and we saw AI, and then these things both go through winters, and now we're kind of seeing an uptick in investment in climate tech. So actually just understanding where the money is flowing based on various geopolitical forces is also going to help you target where you want to apply for work. And also having an interest in the things that you want to work on is a huge thing, because let me tell you, working on something that you find really boring or tedious, or you can't stand the people you're working with, that's not a recipe for a sustainable design career. You really need to be into what you're doing. And actually, those are kind of the three things that I'd say really underpin a successful and sustainable career in design, because you're going to be here for a while. Your career trajectory might not look like what you think it is in your head. You might twist and turn, you might take various different paths, but actually following your interests and the things that you're passionate about, things that you're going to want to spend the extra time and the extra hours getting into and fixing and exploring. Those are the things that people look for in an interview situation. Do you care about this? Are you interested? Are you invested? I think those are the things that are really going to help move the needle in your favor.
Thank you, David. Yeah, these are great points. So we will have to wrap up soon. I know we've been going for quite some time, but I know this is a very important discussion, right? I love that we're having it and that we're addressing this issue, because this is like the topic that is on everyone's mind, right? So I think it's good to address it and to prepare and brainstorm. And again, understand how you can get ahead and take action, right? Instead of just putting this away and not thinking about it and then getting left behind as a result. So I also want to take Gurjinder's question. If you guys have, like, whoever has experience on this specifically, maybe can answer. AI within tech we use every day can quickly become an ethics issue, which has already been mentioned, based on how much it's listening and looking into our activities. So how do you guys navigate ethics issues working in AI-driven UX?
I can grab this one. I work on, I can't talk much about it, but basically I'm working in healthcare and I'm working on AI projects. And for us, every single employer, right, in healthcare projects usually have to take HIPAA training, right, and understand the importance of patient and doctor privacy, right, as we work with real people. So for me, for example, I was not able to use any, Notion or Dovetail or any of that if any conversation actually contain any patient information. So it's a strict no. I can use it for my note taking, some like abstract information and summarization. But as a company, if we want to work with AI tools, apparently there's opportunity to sign some contracts, right? If you're using ChatGPT fine-tuned model and you utilizing in your technology, there is a way to explore possibility to sign up HIPAA compliant agreement that if we're using this technology in our features and we actually have access to patient data and private data, it will not be distributed outside of that specific solution that we're working on. So I think definitely having a legal representation on your team, right? Digging into what's available, how you can protect yourself as a company. And even if something like that doesn't exist yet, trying and exploring it and figuring out how to make it happen and then signing that up. So maybe there's not a lot of regulation around AI specifically, but there's a lot of regulation in place in this country around data and just applying the same rules when possible.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think more and more regulation is kind of like those folks actually starting to take a look at AI more, and more things starting to happen as they understand that we need to take action soon, and not just because we cannot move at bureaucratic pace to regulate AI in a meaningful sense. I also want to take anyone else, but by the way, before we jump on anyone else wants to add anything on ethics and challenges about that?
We don't know how to do it.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
That's the answer. You're expecting AI and ethics. We don't know how to do it, period.
But
Yeah,
it's our
so-
responsibility to explore it, right? And push.
I'm not arguing that point. The thing I went to school at Wharton. I got my MBA there, right? Kind of thing. And financial people, and you guys live in New York, so you know, they're incentivized to push the edge of the law to get your arbitrage opportunity. Tech people are incentivized to push the edge of tech and what can do, what can happen, what can't happen, right? And any law or regulation you have, like Enron happened, and then they had a law, right? Always, follows the incident, right? Because people are incentivized to push the envelope, right? Kind of thing. And a lot of times when you're pre-law and you push the envelope, you have unintended consequences. And that's what I really meant, Sasha. I agree that there should be regulation and there should be things, but really it's the ethics have to be the people developing it, right? And they have to say, I'm just not trying to make the most money in the world. I'm going to try to do it without hurting people or something like that, right? Same thing with tech designers. Can I build tech that that makes me money but doesn't hurt people? So it's more a teaching ethics and morals to people, which we've kind of given up on as a society. That it's going to really drive that kind of activity, right? Because laws will always follow a disaster. Buildings have to burn down before there's fire codes, right? And so all that being said, that's why I said we don't know how to do it. I know we're supposed to, Sasha. I know we're supposed to care, but I'm saying, just realistically, we don't know how to do it.
I would also add one more thing. I agree with your point, but I won't give up my optimism. I think as a designer, every day have a choice to make, and I'll make choices that will be protecting when possible my users and people involved. But I know AI is a super hot topic, but I know many people don't even know what it is and how to talk about it. And there's some free resources available. So I don't know if anyone has an account with Coursera. You can just sign up for a free. They have a free ChatGPT course that will give you at least a basic understanding of what is this about. It'll take you 2 hours, but will increase, give you options for your vocabulary and a way to process it. So search for Coursera ChatGPT free course just to start somewhere. And then there will be a few points about ethics as well. Not answers how to solve the problem, but at least like points for thoughts and considerations, what could be potential problematic areas for that. But yeah, we can make a choice every day.
Great points. Yeah, just to add to that, to Rebecca's question, in terms of prompt, that was the other question, prompt engineer, what are some of the new job titles that are emerging? So I think we already addressed that in the chat. There is also Ravi's question, is there any part of UX or UI that is negatively impacted because of AI? So, well, depends, like, what do you mean by negatively, right? Is automating mundane tasks, is that negative or is that positive, right? So it's, I would just wanted to quickly answer, because I know we already covered a little bit about this. As of now, right, it looks like the more mundane tasks are being automated, right? Especially in something that is more clear, more step-by-step, more systematic, more like process-oriented, something less structured and less clear that is more, requires more creativity is not, at least not as much, maybe to some degree, a little bit. So yeah, I would just think about that and basically equip yourself with skills, not be too focused on those kind of more low-level, more mundane tasks, and try to understand the bigger picture, the whole process, different areas. And then also I would be optimistic about the problems that AI may create. Again, it may create new businesses and new opportunities for UX folks to address as well, right? So it may create new UX projects or new UX roles potentially, like under the UX umbrella, or maybe, called something else, but like in the same area, in the same space. Just wanted to mention that. All right. So I think we'll be wrapping up in a second. I want to take maybe one last question. Because I want to make sure we address as many of these as possible.
There's one, the
So-
most upvoted one, which
Oh yeah, Tia. Yeah, I keep wanting. Yeah, that's the one I just wanted to actually address. Tia, the Tia. Let me know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. How do you think AI will affect UX hiring practices? And we kind of, talked a lot about these different areas, right? Anything else you guys want to add?
I think I would add to it that even if you have never worked on AI projects, just general familiarity with the topic will help, right? Just like go train your eye, look at the offerings available, think about what's good, what's not good, think about ethics, learn basic way to talk about it and the trends and patterns. And I think this is like you being hired as a UX designer or product designer, but I think there's also internal effect, like how AI tools could be implemented during hiring, right? And I think there's some good light in this. I think AI tools could help us to actually avoid some biases potentially when we're hiring, right? To like diversify the pool of candidates, to help us make better decisions about like if I'm hiring, if this person is actually a good match for us or not, or I'm not hiring because I think her hair is not really good today, so things like that. So having this tool as like another person on the panel to decide if someone is a good fit for the team or not could be very beneficial. And on the other side, we as candidates probably will benefit from it because there will be more justified decisions, unless you're really taking every job with pure charisma. So then maybe it's a food for thought. So that's about it. I think just being familiar, being ready to take on the challenge and know how to talk about it and what to expect.
Thank you, Sasha. Francesco, do you want to add anything?
No, I mean, I know I've seen some questions about also if there's other titles that are coming up. I think yes, prompt engineer is one, but there's it's more like I'd see it more as and obviously there's on the developer side, there's a ton of roles. I think that's where there's more specialization. People want you to know about the machine learning and artificial intelligence API, at least how to integrate it in the product at the very least. That's for sure, I think. But from the standpoint of the UX creative, it's more of a skill that you need to be aware of and need to, and it's not going to be only UX. It's going to be also in all sorts of other fields, because now every CEO got the bug that with AI, you might be able to do something faster, better, more valuable, productive. And so lots of other jobs that even in front of a computer either will have to leverage AI that is offered to them already as a tool, or be able to, even within spreadsheets, be able to use AI to create, you're not writing macros anymore. You don't have to necessarily, but you need to be able to ask those questions so that they know what technology can do for you, right? And one way can be to talk to developers, and the other is to take a course, so you at least, have the very basics of what can be done. I think those are, but yeah, I know the question was coming from a recruiter. That I think that's, be able to evaluate how much AI is part of that job more than the job title.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Yeah, so as promised, I'll tell you guys how to make yourself more marketable with the program we're running in a second. But I want to take maybe one more question before we do that. So Tatiana was asking, can the articles from Nielsen and McKinsey be shared? So Tatiana, I was referring to McKinsey. I would say that McKinsey has a whole AI-focused newsletter. So I don't remember the exact, it's not a specific article, but I would just sign up for that newsletter. They have a lot of great stuff. There is also another great AI newsletter, I think called Superhuman, like that one, shares a lot of valuable tips. And I can think maybe more, and maybe we'll send you guys some information later. But yeah, I think I really like McKinsey stuff because it's that's what I really, what helped me learn that from their reports in terms of automation of activities rather than roles, right? And then just, I mean, at least in the long term, in the near long term, right? We don't know what's going to happen in like 30 years or whatever, right? But you may be excited about doing more interesting work, right? More complex work, more, work that was not, and doing less mundane work, right? So, and then basically having the machine help do some of that. So with that said, thank you guys so much. This was really awesome. I really appreciate your guys' time and you guys joining us. Hope you guys enjoyed the event, got some great insights. As promised, right? So this is specifically for those of you who are transitioning into UX and looking to start a UX career, right? As promised, so many people ask about our program. So as promised earlier, let me just quickly tell you a little bit about the program that we're running, since it may be a great opportunity for some of you to not just build, like very strong real client portfolio and real work experience, but also get the crucial career prep to master UX job search and interview, and so you can actually land a UX role. So who the program is best for? It's best fit for people who know UX basics, or come from a design, research, creative tech related background and look to transition into UX roles, into UX in one of the most effective and efficient ways and without quitting their jobs. We're also pretty selective, so we'll look for motivated and committed team players. We ran multiple cohorts, helped roughly 150 people or so get hired by many well-known companies like SiriusXM, Coach, Google, JPMorgan, many more. Recently, I've also been ranked by SwitchUp as one of the best UX programs as well, and featured in Fortune magazine. Advisors and mentors are also UX practitioners from also well-known companies like Google, IDEO, Amex, etc. What you gain from it, right, is you build not just the hard skills, but the critical softer skills, real experience with a robust portfolio, expand your professional network, and actually get ready to land the UX role. So, and in fact, because the grads have done so well, we also offer the money-back guarantee. So you basically either land the UX role or you get your tuition back plus an extra $300 on top of that. So if it sounds like you may be a good candidate, you can learn more on beginx.com. The next start date is October 25th, and our cohorts are quite small and do fill up pretty quickly, so please act soon. Also, anyone who attended this event will be eligible for a $400 tuition credit if accepted. To claim that credit, just what you need to do is by this Friday, go to the website and you will see the link in the chat and just request a free, no commitment career transition consultation. And by the way, these consultations are designed to be not just some quick program pitch, right? So they provide an opportunity for you to learn about UX career transition best practices and pitfalls, which you want to avoid, get guidance, get personalized advice, and ask questions about your own UX career switch and how the program can help. So and then ultimately see if it may be a good fit for you or not. If not, totally fine. So we frequently run different types of events, right? So today was focused on AI. We cover a lot of UX careers topics usually. So we'll keep you guys updated about upcoming events and share resources via our newsletter that is usually sent every few weeks or so. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you again to our wonderful guest speakers for taking their time to join us and provide all the valuable insights. It was a huge pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.
All right.
So dark here already. Thank you.
Yay. It got darker and darker and darker there. I was like,
At least you still get some screen light.
Oh.
All right. Thank you, guys. See you later.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.